1, go. Yeah. All right. Brett. Hi.
Hello.
Looks like it's working and we're live, man. All right. Love it. Love it, love it, love it.
All streamlined, all slick.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for helping out. And I mean, especially with the code and things like that. I mean, just kind of a quick update. Henrique, who's working on our ZK Snark stuff, had a good breakthrough yesterday, was it? Day before yesterday?
It was yesterday.
Yeah, yesterday, where he was able to actually get it to fail, which was kind of a holdup for us because the ZK Snarks always passed, and that's not good. Yeah, you know, we got to test, be able to test, you know, fake ZK Snarks, bad stuff, and everything was always passing, but he finally figured it out. Part of the problem is that we're having to pull code from different areas in the Crypto 3 library, the Nil Foundation Crypto 3 library. Like they have a directory of code in under the compiler, the ZKLLVM, which is the compiler for the Snarks circuits. And so they have some code over there, and then they have some code in Crypto 3, and we're kind of acting as, I don't know, cleanup crew, I guess, a little bit. We're going to try to maybe merge it or fork it or something like that because it's a little bit of a mess over there to try to make things work because documentation's disappearing and all kinds of stuff. But what do you think, Brian?
Well, I mean, indeed, when we're talking about refining the precise behavior that we're looking for the circuits that we're generating with ZK Snarks, and then finding the little anomalous holes that were spread across 3 different repos of the original code from which we've taken this capability, then it just simply turns into an exercise. Oh, okay, well, we've got to go make those fixes, and being kind of good citizens, it'd be nice to kind of go ahead and give that back to them as well. Now, that's not our priority. We'll take care of giving back once we get our test net. This is something we've canvassed in a previous AMA that kind of the premise that for those of you who are fans of Elon Musk, the least expensive, easiest to maintain part of a system, a large complex system, is the part that doesn't exist, the one that you didn't have to make. It got designed out of the system, and Ken and I are, thoroughly believe in that principle. Anything, we don't have to build, we would prefer not to, just, take it as available from packages that are available online, etc. And in the case of the ZK LLVM, which he's referencing, that is a classic case in point that, so much of this turns into code that we just simply don't have to write. And other communities are already just doing batteries of their own tests and utilization with it. And that doesn't mean, though, in our specialized case that we're not going to find, like those little anomalous edge cases, which is what we're canvassing. So looking to then synchronize, okay, well, the aspects of their code that is best suited for us when they themselves have spread it across 3 repos, which I find will be a little annoying, is just something that's consuming some of our time here. And oh well, it is what it is. But I would by far, oh my Lord, prefer this over the no, let's just build the whole thing from scratch ourselves. Why? Don't.
I used to call that NIH syndrome, not invented here, or not invented, NIH, not invented here syndrome. And I saw that throughout my whole entire career, where somebody would, and I heard programmers, and what they said to me, a lot of these guys coming out of college was, hey, I've never had a chance to write that, so I want to do it myself. Well, I want to produce a product. So producing a product does not mean that you get to go off and have fun and develop your own version of something. And that's where I got kind of, get kind of annoyed with people. It's like, look, I do not have NIH syndrome. If I can beg, borrow, and steal code from somebody that's even 90% done, I'll do it, because, there's a lot of good coders out there, and you have to leverage in order to produce product. And I know programming to some people is fun. It is to me too, but I also don't like to write code twice, right? And so if I have to rewrite code and refactor it, I'm miserable, because there's no fun in doing that. There's no moving your brain forward or educating yourself if you're just rewriting and rehashing the same code over and over again. So yeah, but anyway, and then Justin, on the other hand, he's also has had a breakthrough also yesterday with he was having some problems with multiple nodes producing or processing data, and he finally figured out most of the bugs in there. And I think both of them had said they're just basically cleaning up the code in order to integrate it with the wallet and into the SDK. Is that correct?
That's correct. I mean, the little instances of anomalous behavior, for example, closing out a write to one of our keys, our data availability layer, and to watch that, like, why did it not complete? And, he's spotting just the little fragments of what are responsible for preventing that from, completing. So, those get taken care of. It's like, okay, now it seems to be working fine. But which is great, because that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to be moving past these difficulties, and you get rewarded sometimes. No good deed goes unpunished. You get rewarded with, like, oh well, here's the next problem. Oh well, welcome to software. So
yeah. But I do think it's dwindled down to a very, very small set of I wouldn't even call them blockers, but speed bumps really from us to getting to testnet. I've seen it in the code, and when it's mostly working and he's not getting crashes on the testing that he's doing, that's a good sign, right? Before it was like,
yeah, I'll agree. We definitely don't want crashes. I am kind of more interested in the more refined points of, did we get the precise behavior we're looking for, actually the conversation that we're having right now, I really feel like we've done a lot to canvas what is otherwise our first submitted question today in the AMA. It says here, could Ken break down what that last tiny bit, last 0.1% entails for testnet to go live? Are there any big stoppers left, or is it triple checking everything? And my own comment on this is, this AMA is not meant to be this highly technical, let's go down in this itemized list. So I think Ken and I probably want to avoid that. But with what we have so far kind of had as a conversation between the two of us, I think that kind of paints a picture of where we are for those who are technical. And Ken, any thoughts on that?
Yeah. And I mean, it is basically triple checking. I mean, I think there's like one kind of thing that I worked on that needs a little bit more updating, and that is the bridging from the test nets, the like Ethereum Sepolia and base Sepolia smart contracts into Super Genius, so that when you create the job, it creates it bridges the tokens from Sepolia and into Super Genius to start operating. Everything really kind of operates in independent silos right now, and we're just connecting them really and triple checking the connections. The wiring, we're wiring everything up is what we're doing. It's like, okay, that rocket engine works now.
Avionics system, rocket engine's avionics system.
Yeah. Avionics systems, they all work, right? And they work independently. And then we're like wiring them up, and we're like, oh, hey, we got an extra wire here, or we're missing a wire from over here. And this one is like, okay, well, all right, let's move this over here, do this. Okay, now we can go over here. So that's kind of what we're doing. And then we're triple checking everything, just like building a rocket engine. We're triple checking everything. I feel it's very, very, very close. The wallet, as soon as we get those wires hooked up, that's the other part, is the wallet is kind of almost like, I guess that's almost kind of like the avionics system, right? We got everything done. We got those two pieces, the rocket engines and the booster rocket, working together. And now the avionics system, or the wallet, is having to, say, okay, I need this wire, or show me where this wire is, run it through the chassis into the avionics system. Mm-hmm. So that's what we're doing. We're kind of taking, hey, this wire from, that monitors the rocket engine, I need to run this through the rocket itself and the infrastructure itself. And then, because the avionics is up at the top, right? And I'm like trying to run this wire all the way through there. And I'm like in the muck of this stuff going, okay, shoot, there's a chair in the way. I got to go around this way. And that's kind of what we're doing right now. And then triple checking that wire, can withstand, the $100,000 degree rocket engine or whatever it is.
Or the 100 amps that is passing through.
Yeah, exactly. And the heat from the rocket engine too, as well. But yeah, that's all we're doing right now. I know there is a little bit left with our conversation going back and forth about whether we need consensus or not, and whether the ZK snarks are enough to secure the network and all that. But I don't really think that we need to completely finalize that during testnet, and that's kind of what the bridging, manual bridging helps us avoid, where we don't, we'll see if it works, and I'm pretty sure my gut's telling me that everything will work correctly and we won't have any security holes, but that's what the testnet's for, and that's the reason we don't bridge automatically, is for us to sit there and go, okay, we're pretty sure this works, but some hacker can come along and say, oh, hey, I figured out how to bypass your ZK snarks, or bypass, the data availability layer to write, these transactions into your data and take everybody out. I don't think it's possible, and I've been trying to convince Brent. He keeps coming back, boxing with me and saying, well, what about this and what about that? And then I'm like, well, I think this works and I think this works. But in general, that's not blocking us from releasing testnet, because again, that is a theory, I wouldn't call it a theory, a pretty well thought out process for security that we think, or we're 99% sure won't be breakable, or at least not without quantum computing involved. 99% sure, but now we want to kind of talk about that 1% and launch the 99% when all the other stuff is hooked up together, and then really, really focus on watching that last 1% that we're unsure about. And that's really kind of where we are.
And actually adding to that characterization, given that you made a reference to consensus, I think I will say something about how a traditional blockchain is going to be heavyweight on a consensus paradigm and algorithm. The utilization of ZK snarks within the framework of consensus and verification is more of a nascent capability. Now there are blockchains that are using that, but nevertheless, it doesn't dominate where the industry is, and what we're capable of when we're leveraging that technology is to take what is otherwise a heavyweight consensus approach and then just be able to chop it down quite a bit. And so the portions that we might have discussions internally about, like, well, do we want a very lightweight consensus capability? Then it just starts to translate into, okay, well, what more lifting can we pull out of the ZK snark? And then it turns also into, okay, well, there's there's medium level of lifting we can get from it. There's more of a maximal lifting we can get from it. And then between those two also turns into the anomalies we were talking about earlier, where, okay, the ZK LLVM team, they gave us such tremendous capabilities with what they delivered in their code. There's this one piece that we're asking for that maybe, do we want to go ahead and make the corrections to their code to make certain we have that, or do we really need it? Do we want to let it go and just let a very modest consensus capability address that? And it's that kind of tuning and balancing that is part of Ken and I duking it out with each other. And in terms of my own resistance to having failures and security holes, that's why I go attempt to beat Ken up, and I'm always rubbing my hands to be as evil as possible with, how do I break this? I'm going to break this. And
Well, I think one thing the audience should really understand is I appreciate how Brent's doing that, because he came from American Express and these enterprise companies, and so him beating me up and boxing with me, back and forth and sparring with me about the security of the thing is what I hired him to do, right? I mean, yeah, I wouldn't say we really get heated, but it's a good stiff conversation sometimes, if you will, with him and I. And I've worked with him for 25 years off and on, so it's not unusual, but it kind of goes to securing the project, and so it's a great synergistic relationship in that respect.
Absolutely. And I would say actually what these strong conversations we sometimes have, those are actually, I would say, when Ken and I are at our absolute best. Like, I feel like the best things come out of those conversations. So if you're listening, you think, oh, that sounds like a bad thing. No, you want us to have those, believe me. Well, I'll tell you what, I think we kind of beat up that question quite a bit, and we put a whole lot of context around it, which I think is a beautiful thing in order to get people's head in the game of where we are, and even helping to guide, whether it be revisions to questions today or that we receive in the future. But in the interest of trying to be concise and see if we can do this as compactly as possible, let's go ahead and move on. And I will suggest we look at our next question here. Let's see. I've downloaded an app that monitors GPU usage on my iPhone, and I've noticed it heats up dramatically when the GPU runs over 60%. Is this an issue for GNUS AI?
I don't think it is, because when the 60% mark is hit, you're usually that's on like a very small percentage of games or that are running full 50%, 60%, and that Apple has optimized the battery life and the heating of the battery down to 50% on, or 60%, whatever it was, on these AAA games that are just massively using the game, the GPU itself. We don't. That's a very, very, very small percentage of the games, and we won't actually probably be integrated into that type of game because we don't want to kill your battery, right? And so it's like, if there's no battery left to, or heat, left to use, or if the 60% is the maximum that Apple lets you use, and the game's using it, we won't use anymore. And we're only supposed to be using probably, I don't know, 3 to 5% more. So, if you have a game or some app that is using that much, we probably won't operate on that particular game. But like I said, it's going to be a small percentage of the games.
And kind of to add to that, it is fundamental to our design to avoid, Ken just made a reference to 3%, to avoid using 50% of or 80% or 95% of your GPU. That's by design. That's not some kind of a limitation. We are aware that there's battery life concerns. We're also of the mind that we want there to be a kind of an egalitarian approach to how people, depending what kind of device they have, that everyone's equally able to earn GNUS tokens. So really, it is a overall decisioning of how does our network behave so that the battery is just not an issue. So, if you're already operating at 60% GPU, well, then never mind our tooling. You're already facing an issue. It's already hot in your hand, and we're not, even if we were to run in that environment, I don't think you would notice any difference, because if you went from 60% to 62%, 63%, are you going to tell? But all right. Let's see. I'm going to go ahead and jump on our next question. How is the search for more engineers and devs going to further expand the GNUS AI network worldwide?
Well, I've had a couple people approach me, but I've been heads down with the test net, so I haven't really been exploring or talking or interviewing with additional engineers. I do know Brent is talking with another really great engineer. How's that going, by the way?
Yeah, so that great engineer is now on vacation outside the U.S. So I'm kind of like, okay, it wasn't very thoughtful of him to time his vacation when we have such a high need, or we would really desire to have that person. But there's another one I'm looking at right now, and I'm with you, Ken. Same place, is that I'm so heads down with what we're rolling out here that. The hunt for the C++ engineers, et cetera, is not been my primary concern. But
it also takes time for them to get up to speed, so they wouldn't be useful before testnet anyway. In our timeline, because we want to get testnet out ASAP. So trying to hire somebody and then getting them up to speed, easily, 3 to 4 weeks easily. And so because the system is so big and there's a lot of new stuff with crypto, it takes, the ordinary, there's not a lot of C++ engineers out there that have, even a year of experience in the crypto space. That's the biggest problem, right? You need to find really good C++ engineers that can come up to speed quickly on anything that they've ever touched. And even those guys are kind of hard to find because a lot of them are very much siloed into particular areas of like networking or something like that. And we really need a generalist because blockchain is so complicated and such diverse things are being used in our system, including networking, peer-to-peer networking, cryptography, and all that. And so finding an engineer, if we find engineers that are specialists in like cryptography, then we have to manage them, and so that will take away from our time for testnet, and we can't do that right now, and that's the biggest problem. And them coming up to speed. So.
And of course, also when we do finally move to bring one or more, onto the team, other concerns about just is this person willing to learn quite a bit? Because if they're just like, no, I just want to do this one siloed thing, that would not be, as Ken said, a generalist. Even someone who would have a love of going deeper into their understanding beyond what they already have of C++, not just the realm of logical design, but physical design. And if I say much more than that, I'll start to go into a technical wormhole that Ken would not appreciate. So, and perhaps the audience. So, but I think we've kind of canvassed that. It's not our immediate priority. As Ken said, we would not be able to get much use out of someone like that, given the spin-up time that they would require. So, but I am pleased with some of the candidates we've been looking at. All right, so next question. Any new partnerships being planned out? And what sector regarding partnerships is the most exciting for you, Ken and Brent?
Yeah, so we have another energy company in Asia that basically has some older equipment, some older IoT devices, and they're failing and things like that, and they need to replace them. And if you think about it, they need, and they're using AI right now, some old antiquated cloud system over there in Asia also, and they're looking to replace that. And so we're talking with them about a joint venture where we would provide kind of the cloud services for them, whether that's our own GNUS AI for the AI side of things, because that's what they want to do. They want to do a lot of AI on the IoT devices and the monitoring devices out in these energy production plants and things like that. So yeah, that's one that we're in deep talks with right now. We're like we said before, we're kind of beating off the natives, if you will, or I guess it's a bad term, beating off the onboarders, the people that want to onboard, because I keep getting, love the business development team. Not saying you guys are bad, keep it coming, but it's like, okay, we're trying to get testnet out, then we can go full force on taking this guy and this person. We have to prioritize it, and then we'll ramp up as soon as the testnet's done. Hiring some kind of external company to help us onboard these various people that are kind of beating at the doors and beating back the zombies. There we go. That's what we're doing. We're beating back the zombies right now.
We've used that word before. Yeah, it is a bit like, you look out the windows of your little stronghold and you see the horde coming at you. You're like, oh my gosh. So, but that's a good problem to have.
The horde's the better name instead of zombies, because these guys aren't zombies. They're just, well, I guess they're like GNUS AI. Like brains.
And then suddenly we start to get into the Monty Python kind of skits, like, run away.
Yeah.
But what, that question was kind of making reference to like like industry sector that you'd be excited about, and I want to say a couple things about that myself. That there's the contrast between what is exciting and what is surprising. And, for me, an example of something I would be excited about, because I think, personal health is a very important thing, a topic near and dear to Ken and I. I'd like to see, industry that is focusing on AI utilization that helps individuals to do their own functional self-care is what it's called. And to really push the envelope in that, because I mean, look, the health in the US is strangely bad. It should not be that way. We should be in the opposite situation. So that would be an area I'd be excited about. Then, of course, there's the element of surprise, which wasn't part of the question, but I am kind of curious about what will surprise me. Like, for example, we're in this game for a year. It's out on mainnet. And next thing we know, our biggest utilizers are people in the furniture industry. And, and I would be like, whoa, didn't see that coming, but I know something like that's going to happen, so Ken?
Yeah, I think the biggest, because I came from the game industry and I still want to write games after we're done. I think that's my biggest thing, is that I have a design that I want to finish off eventually and kind of hire. That's what I'm kind of most excited about. But health first, as you said, because if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. And I had, with my recent kind of, I wouldn't call it scare, but just, enlightenment, if you will, my health.
A reminder
that your health is important. It's something that I am kind of passionate about. But I would prefer that I didn't have to worry about that. That would be great, because then I could completely focus on fun, games to make and stuff like that. And I really have this great design I've had in my head for a lot of years, and I really want to execute on that. But I also want to build a new gaming company, or resurrect Graffiti Entertainment into a new gaming company. And there's a lot of interest from family offices that don't understand blockchain and crypto, that are like, hey, my grandkids and my kids play games, can I invest in the gaming company? And I'm like, well, okay, yeah, we can do that. But, that wasn't the main goal of GNUS, right? GNUS is kind of a monetization channel for different industries, but it just so happens that is still a very much a passion of mine to do video games. So maybe, a quarter of my time can be spent doing video games and 3/4 doing, managing the GNUS.ai system.
Okay, excellent. I think we've really got that one, that fun question kind of circled. So moving into this next, GNUS should have some liquidity on Solana. There's a big untapped market share. Bridging could be done via wormhole.
Yeah, that's a great idea. After testnet, man. I want to get on all those. In fact, if you look at our main page, it does say Solana and Cardano. There is some ways to take your smart contracts from Solidity and put them on Solana. And so Solana. So that's definitely on the horizon, and I definitely want to do that. But this last little part just needs ultra focus from everybody on the team right now. But as you can see from a check-in that I did recently, it doesn't take me very long. It took me 3 hours to write a new smart contract that does a proxy from ERC20 token, so you can have your own ERC20 token that proxies into our smart contract. Only one test worked, and I didn't finish off the rest of the testing. But within 3 hours, I had the system up and the proxy contract written, and one of the tests working and all that. I didn't interface to the other smart contract, but that was the last piece I was going to write. But in general, that was to get some of the other projects onboarding soon that want to basically raise funds in their own ERC20 token, but still utilize the GNUS.ai smart contract directly, so they don't have to create their own smart contracts. But anyway, that's I took 3 hours of my time to kind of blast that out, but I need to get back on finishing off testnet. So that was kind of a sidetrack, if you will, for me. But it's still useful. But I just can't. I really want to get on Solana and do that, but I got to stay focused on the testnet.
Yeah. And let's see, I'll go ahead and consider that one checked, and we'll go on to, can you provide a brief overview of GNUS total and circulating supply?
Yeah, it's kind of difficult, but the reality is there are, it looks like there's roughly I can't give you an exact amount, and we have somebody working on some code to be able to pull that, because the circulating supply has to subtract out the lock tokens that are on unvest.io, for instance, the team tokens and all that. You can't consider those circulating supply because they can't be sold. They're locked in those contracts. But roughly on Ethereum, I think there's 1.1 million, roughly, a little bit less than that, 1.093 million, that I believe are in the circulating supply, because that's the total supplies out there. I don't believe any of those are locked. Some of those well, I take that back. There's some of them in the liquidity pool. There's about 93,000 in the liquidity pool and 22,000 in another liquidity pool. So that's roughly 110,000 are in the liquidity pool. So very, very little in the liquidity pool on Ethereum. On the other side of it, I think I believe there's about 800,000 that are unlocked on the Polygon network. And so on the Binance and the base chain, Binance, there's 6 million, and all of those are locked in the liquidity pool. And so those are my tokens. So they're not liquid, basically. And so they'll never be liquid. So those aren't in the circulating supply. And base had 250,000. I think there's like 7,000 left out there in the circulating supply. And if you consider it's still in the liquidity pool there. So that looks to be a roughly 1.8 million, almost 2 million, maybe somewhere between 1.8 million and 2 million in actual circulating supply. And then, of course, everything else is locked up in unvest.io and in my personal wallets and my multi-sigs, which you guys can track. And I don't consider the circulating supply because, like I said, they're not circulating, they're not being sold, and they will never be sold probably on the open market unless, World War III happens or something. And yeah, probably not even then.
Thank you, Ken, for that answer. It sounded complete to me. I'm going to treat it that way and move on to our next question here that actually I feel like this next question, essentially, we have already answered it because it's asking, Ken, are you thinking or wondering about into the future, how GNUS will be used 2 to 3 years from now? And we talked about, what would be exciting industry and functional self-care and things like this, unless there's something else you want to add to that, Ken, I think we might consider this one to be answered.
Just really quickly, I think in the next 3 years, you're going to see a major disruption to, let's give it a 3 to 5 year time frame, because I'm usually a little too, I see the future, but I'm usually a little too optimistic that it'll come into play too quickly. So let's give it 3 to 5 years, and I see that GNUS and other, and I'm hoping, since crypto's so fast, that it'll happen a lot quicker than I'm predicting this time. Just a major disruption to the likes of Amazon and Google, and we're already kind of seeing that with Run on Flux, which is a container system that basically can run CPU containers just like you can on Amazon and things like that at an 80% reduction in cost. It's just going to take a while for adoption. That's why I'm giving it 3 to 5 years, because all the migration that needs to happen, and we need to get funding to do that migration for these companies. And the enterprise companies don't move very fast. But if you think back when Amazon first launched cloud, it took them 10, 12 years before they really hit the inflection point. We're 8 years in. And so, that's why I'm predicting 3 to 5 years of that kind of disruption happening across AI and just the compute industry more than just AI. AI is a process on top of the compute that is nice and is disrupting industries, but the underlying compute infrastructure is really going to disrupt in the next 3 to 5 years maximum.
Excellent. Okay, next question. Interesting one. Can GNUS be rented out? Like subcontracted compute? I mean, I have my own interpretation of this question.
I can't even I can't even wrap my head around that. So go ahead, though.
Yeah. I think this is kind of quasi relates to a conversation we've had even months ago, which is the potential to introduce into the GNUS network something akin to VPNs, where you have cordoned off certain networks where an entity says, like, we want to make certain that the AI compute that we're executing is only ours on our 100,000 or 1 million nodes. That would be my spin on that question. And based on the conversation we had in the past, that is something we would, be interested in doing. It is, not like a feature that we're pursuing right now, but, for those scenarios where there's a partner who says, look, because we represent the following objective, we want to make certain that the kinds of utilization, the kinds of jobs being executed on our 1 million nodes falls into a certain category of utility to mankind. And it's like, well, okay, if that's what you want, we at GNUS, we are not going to be policing the kinds of AI jobs that people are putting out there. But we could give you kind of a quasi VPN on the network where you are policing it. You've got your own portal. So I'll just simply say, insofar as I've, kind of translated the question to something else, there's a yes there. We would like to do that in the future.
Yeah. And when you put it that way, there has been a few days ago a request for making Sharia compliant tokens, and that would need that kind of VPN cordoning off. It's very possible. I went with ChatGPT and kind of said, hey, are we Sharia compliant? And basically it said, oh, you'd have to do these 7 things in order to be that way. And I said, well, given GNUS does this and this and this and this, is it compliant? It basically said yes. And said, here's why. And it gave me a list of 7 things why it was compliant. And that's cordoning off, because there's been other requests from different ones that, aren't Sharia compliant, right? Definitely not. And having to do with pornography, really, but we can't stop them from using the GNUS AI system, but we can cordon them off, like you said. And so that would make it where it's just like, if Sharia compliant stuff is using something or sending money out to a bank that is not Sharia compliant, they're still Sharia compliant because they're internally in their cordon off system is, and they can do all that. But some of those people might want to come out of that system. Then you get away from the, Sharia compliant type of thing. So yeah, I agree. It's very possible. We had talked about that before, and there has been a request, and I kind of checked it out, and it's very, very possible to do with the GNUS token, the GNUS system.
Well, earlier I had made a comment about ways in which our network would be used. It surprised me, and I might just basically saying, "Oh, I didn't see that coming." Even what you just commented there, Ken, it kind of almost falls in that category. It's like, what? I did not foresee someone's going to ask, are you Sharia compliant? Or for that matter, if there's that, someone's going to say, well, is this kosher compliant? And I go, okay, well. Here we go. But all part of the fun. I'll go ahead and jump into, boy, I tell you what, we are really doing great on time today. And I think we've got like kind of expert moderation helping in the background with kind of making certain our questions are kind of pruned up. So I really appreciate that. Because right now we've only got 2 questions left, and yet we are still more than 20 minutes out to our hour mark. Let's see.
Really brief. We have a chat system. I see King came on, and of course, Brent and I are on there. If anybody wants to kind of go on to the studio side of things, I think there was a link to that. You can come on there, and you can actually come in there and chat too. But I think we'll have our producer there kind of moderate those questions. I don't want to get a flood of questions in there too. I prefer the ones we're having now because it's helping. But if we have extra time, maybe we can take a couple more questions from there.
Okay, so with the 2 questions we've got left on this venue, the Slido venue, we have GNUS tokens on 3 chains currently. When you launch mainnet, you will have native GNUS tokens on its own layer 1. Is that right?
Yes, and we have 4 chains actually. We have Ethereum, Polygon, Base, and Binance, the Binance Smart Chain, BSC. So we actually have 4 chains right now. And we will be another chain among the L1s, kind of like Monero or Bitcoin, but then the bridging system that we're building right now, the last part of it that I talked about, that is the bridging system from our L1 to every other L1. And so you'll have tokens that flow from our L1 and to other L1s. And so there'll be a total of 50 million across all the chains. And so a maximum at any given time. But yeah, it'll be split up among the different chains. I'm hoping, and I'm guessing, and my gut's telling me that most of those tokens will be on the Super Genius L1 because there's no gas fees. And why not keep them there until you want to sell them? Then they'll briefly go out to these other chains where they'll trade. And so when the utilization spikes, most of those tokens, when people start to use AI, will be on the Super Genius network. And so that's kind of a good thing for speculators if you think about it, because it kind of gets locked away on this other L1 that's being utilized for utility, which is awesome. Because that makes it where we're not a security, but then the other ones can speculate on, there's less circulating supply on those other guys if it's being utilized on our Super Genius blockchain. And so that's kind of a way unique system if you think about it from every other kind of L1 blockchain or DPIN that we have a great advantage on, is if they're kind of locked on and they're being utilized for AI, they're not available to be traded and speculated on.
Okay, awesome. Let's see. Oh, another question popped up in this venue. Let's see. My work schedule prevents me from ever being able to attend these AMAs live. Will playbacks be possible? Oh, they should always be possible.
Yeah. Actually, the reason for we're doing video and Restream.io, it's actually streaming to YouTube right now, and it's streaming to X right now. And so, yeah, you can hit the button and get these playbacks now. That's the reason we did it. So. I'm always thinking about the community and how they can get the information they want and being transparent. And so I really think that, and let us know in the comments, what you guys think. I'm open to suggestions, but I really like this Restream and our faces being on there so you can actually see body language and stuff like that. And that always helps me when I'm watching somebody. If I just hear a voice in the background, I'm like, is this guy being sincere? I don't know. His voice is crackling. Well, little did I know that he was drinking a soda pop, or a sody, a Coke or something in the background, and his voice is cracking because he's got all the fizz in his thing. I didn't know that, but it's just like, why is his voice? Yeah. Why you sound like that, Brett?
Yeah.
Right. It's not that he was pausing because he didn't know, how to lie to you. It was the fact that he was actually drinking water because he was parched.
Oh my goodness. Don't dip your hand about how I go about doing my lies. Okay. So we don't want to do that.
Yeah. You have a good tell, Brent, it's like, no, your lips are moving. That's an old joke.
All right. One more question that is here in Slido anyway, in relation to employee community members to help with training, when testnet and mainnet launches, how will that work? I guess it's a kind of an ask of how does that officially, that hookup, work?
Excuse me. Well, there was somebody there, and I think I mentioned this last time, that, we can approach Deloitte and see if but they're slow. And so there was somebody, a VC on X had mentioned that somebody should start up their own kind of thing, and I think we mentioned this last time. And if somebody started up a company or a group of blockchain experts that could come on there, like a Deloitte, or act like a Deloitte, or Palantir was another one that he mentioned. He said he would fund it, and that would be so useful for us. And if we start, when we start really building up the treasury, we could fund that. I think that would be awesome for us, because that funds our scaling quite a bit. If we can fund a company that can build kind of developer relations, or a Deloitte-like business where they onboard certain enterprise companies into certain software systems and things like that, that will help us tremendously in scaling a lot faster the onboarding process. And so that it's just a matter of money at that point. You know, who gets the money to the thing to build it first, us or somebody else comes in and say, I want a piece of that business and I want to build that because I know that's going to be valuable. That's how that's going to happen, basically.
You know, I might add to that, you know, when we were talking about Deloitte, you know, to me, that's a little bit more of the kind of heavyweight approach, and that I think is applicable. However, to also have a more lightweight approach where we're like, okay, we're going to really beef up documentation considerably to assist people with the most baseline questions that are going to always be asked. And if we were to have that documentation, let's say it's in GitHub, and then there are issues there that people could post because maybe we find common deficiencies in the documentation. That's kind of a little bit of a mode of engagement right there. That's very lightweight. We answer those, we update the documentation. It would be great to kind of just take out all of the most common questions in that regard. And that, of course, is a venue where it does not require a more heavyweight approach of engaging with us. So consider that also to be something that we'll be doing.
Yeah, and I agree. That's a good, I would say that's actually probably a small portion of what I've seen over my career. A lot of times what happens is these guys will be like, that's great. You have this great AI system. Okay, here's some money, do it for me. You know, not, hey, I'm going to have my engineers go read documentation and things like that. That's not my wheelhouse. You know, I'm starting a business, things like that. They would rather pay us to do it for them most of the time. The documentation in that is great for the indie developers who don't have the money to pay for it and are looking for monetization channels. But when it comes to these bigger companies, that's why Palantir, you know, is a multi-billion-dollar company. It specializes in software platforms for big data analytics, headquartered in Denver, Colorado. Their stock price on the New York Stock Exchange is $43.09, right? Because that's kind of what they did. And Deloitte is big like that too. And so the reason that they exist is because the people know what they can or can't do, and they would rather pay an expert to onboard it for them. And this is why these companies exist. But these companies exist and are slow, and I really think there's an opportunity for a crypto business that executes really fast and knows how to onboard. And we've reduced the friction enough that they can onboard a lot faster than these other software companies in integration because of the way we reduce the friction down to zero. But yeah, so that's kind of the answer to that. But you have to understand, Palantir was started by Peter Thiel and, you know, some other big names, you know, Stephen Cohen and Nathan Gettings and things like that, because they understood that all these other enterprise level software companies do not want to do it themselves. They want to pay somebody to do it for them.
Well, I guess I'll just say that Ken's got the great answer for those big corporate consumers, but you little indie guys, I got your back. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, with that, we actually have no more questions in Slido. Now, Ken, you were suggesting that we might take questions from a different little aggregation. We have 12 minutes left. We can either go ahead and attempt to make that shift that you were describing, or who knows, we like signal one of the signals of the apocalypse. We actually ended early or something strange like that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see anybody coming up with questions on the chat necessarily. And I think we did a pretty good job of answering everything. Oh, there's one comment I wanted to make, and this is going to backtrack quite a few minutes into our conversation, early in our conversation, was that the ZK snarks and the consensus part of things. One of the things that if you look up ZK LLVM, it says in there that the snarks and the ZK LLVM is, when you use that, you do not need to have a ZK EVM, which is a zero knowledge Ethereum virtual machine, to execute snarks and roll things up because of the way they're doing things. And they prove this with the Mina protocol, which is using something called placeholder consensus, or placeholder, not consensus, but placeholder protocol. And Mina started using that protocol as well. So we know it works. and it works pretty well. It's still kind of beta almost for the MENA protocol, I would say. I think it's the MENA 2.0 protocol, but it does work. And so we know that it works. And we're adopting, I don't know, what would you say, 80% of that at least? The placement system and all that.
Yes.
But the 20% is kind of our different wiring for our rocket ship, basically.
Incidentally, now I am seeing questions come in. By the way, I see these questions coming in from what looks like to be YouTube. I think this interface is slick. Very nice.
He asked the question on YouTube. Yeah, I do see he's on YouTube. I didn't know that it could do that. That's pretty cool.
Right?
Yeah. All right. So of the 50 million tokens, how many will be on the open market? Like I said, about 2 million will be on the open market right now. And then, 21 million is what is issued. But you have to remember, like I said, at least roughly 13 or 14 million of those are team tokens and my tokens. And so those are not on the open market. They're reserved for companies OTC to buy, and we're going to lock them out of it. What I've done is the deal that I'm offering these family offices, I said, look, if you want to buy these OTC, we're going to lock you out for, I think it was a year, or maybe it's 6 months. Even if it's 6 months, and then you vest over 18 months after that. So a 2-year total vesting period. But if you want to take some of those tokens and utilize them in the AI system, we'll unlock those for you immediately. Because all that does is basically benefit the whole community, because we have the transactions going on, we have the burn rate going on, and so there's no reason for them not to utilize those into the AI system, right? And so if they actually utilize them, but you have to also realize that if they got those and they bought those, then we have money in the treasury from that for those tokens. And so there's nothing stopping us from, supporting the buybacks or anything like that as well, if there's a need to, but I don't think there will be, because they're utilizing it for AI, and yes, they're getting in circulating, but then burns happen. So.
I'm smiling, not because of what Ken just said, but because of a question that just popped up in the channel. Ken, do you want to keep on rolling through those questions there? That you picked one out yourself. So how do you want to do this?
Answering "Do penguins have knees?" question.
Well, yes, that was the one that made me smile. Do penguins have knees? Holy smokes. Boy, you know what? I'm probably going to be spending the next few years just like lost in thought on that one. So.
I've already I'm like, okay, so they're birds, and birds, I guess, have knees in the joint, and the joint does go underneath the feathers, and even though they squat on it, and they do kind of come down when they sit, on their flippers,
Haunches?
right? So, but they have flippers on their arms, so they don't really have elbows. So I'm going to say maybe.
We got to be careful.
I'm leaning yes, but now I got to go Google it or check ChatGPT.
Got to be careful what questions we're encouraging here.
That's a great question. Thanks for lightening the mood in the day. So
let's see. Now they're rolling a little bit faster here. I remember more questions from Mike. They've got a lot of questions from Mike. Maybe we roll those together. I mean, he says, I remember hearing 21 million will be available, but the rest will be reserved for companies.
I answered those questions already.
We got those answered. We got the penguin thing answered. Man, I hope we don't get any more zoology questions, because it'll be tough. Thank you for having these video AMAs. Always great information. Thank you for that feedback. Delighted. We've got one here. What type of games are your favorite genre, Brent and Ken?
For me, I love role-playing games or RPGs, and kind of a mix, because that's one of the games. If you guys look on, if you're very sleuthy, you can look on my my GitHub, my personal GitHub, that's super-genius GitHub, and you can find the design of the game I'm talking about. And one of the reasons I really want to do that game is that it's a space exploration game, but also a shmup, a shoot 'em up. And so I used to love Galaga and games like that, you know. So I've kind of combined my two favorite types of games in this role-playing game where you act as a alien repo guy that's going after these little modules, and then when you find the modules, the energy modules, you bring them back and you rebuild the ship that these other aliens are tearing apart for these energy modules, and then you fly the ship out of the alien ship, and then you're fighting other alien ships in a shmup game, and then you basically get tokens. And guess what? You get genius tokens for repoing, you know, the alien ships that have been stolen. So that's a combination. But I would say that I still have an affinity for arcade games like Donkey Kong. I love it. I used to play that thing, and I still play it today. Every time I see a Donkey Kong machine, like a game developer conference, I go over there and, you know, redo my kidhood, you know, my childhood, and playing those video games, and I love it. So I'm all over the place. My favorite type, though, is really kind of role playing. I used to love Wizardry and those type of role playing games where, you know, not big into first person shooters at all. That's the one genre I don't particularly like, because you go in there, for me, it's twitchy, you get killed, you're out, no fun, bye bye.
And as for my own take on this, I think I have a lot of similarity with Ken, because while I will always love arcade games, classic arcade games, coin-op games, that kind of thing, the role-playing, I'm kind of intrigued to hear you say that, Ken, because I do think that is kind of a special favorite of mine. One of my favorites ever, you know, at least recently anyway, was Oblivion. And I say recently because that was like, what, 2008 time frame? But the idea of a game, a role-playing game, particularly with the better the story, the more I'm going to really want to engage with it. And just as a kind of a side commentary, I would like to see humanity in general up its game at the game of telling story. I feel like in recent years, the capacity to tell story for some reason has diminished. We need to turn that around. I mean, it's part of what it is to be human, is to be able to tell some fantastic stories. So
you bring up a point with that, because really that is kind of the goal with Genius, right? Is to reduce what has happened, in my opinion, is basically it's turned into how do we monetize people, right? And so it doesn't matter what the story is, you know, what can we make addictive that this person's going to you know, hit the button multiple times on, you know, oh, I can't wait to see that. And that doesn't make for a good story. What that makes is for, you know, good dopamine hits, right? And so that's, in my opinion, very negative for the game industry. But we remove that, right, with our negative friction monetization. Now you can just write good stories, and so that's, I think, I won't speak for you, but I would imagine that's something that's one of the reasons you're very attracted to this project, is that, you know, we're able to do games and stories now without having to worry about monetization, because monetization basically kills creativity.
I mean, actually, it's this wasn't asked, but I would say that strangely, kind of an attractive place I could imagine myself being is involved, you know, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, with the production of story for role-playing games, because I would just delight in unpacking some really how should we say this, complicated storylines that present a lot of thoughtful challenges. But you know, I'll get to fantasize about you know, that role when the appropriate time comes. I'm noticing that on the channel here. Go ahead, Ken.
I was just going to say, on a note like that, it is one note is because of my affinity towards certain types of genres of games, is one of the reasons that we're relaunching Graffiti here soon. And Graffiti, your brother, of course, Roger Arias, has gotten a bunch of intellectual property that we were originally working on with Graffiti Entertainment, and the author has since passed away, but his son and his wife have basically signed agreements with Graffiti, which I'm kind of heavily involved with, for some very good role-playing type of genre of games. And I won't mention the name yet until we get the testnet finished. But yeah, it's some pretty cool tech, pretty good intellectual property that we can use to make role-playing games.
Yeah, I'm the title, which will remain unnamed. I'm really quite excited that Roger, enabled that connection, and it really kind of floors me. I'm like, wow, when that gets unveiled, people are going to jaw drop. So
saying anything, but people, it might be right there on the video anyway. So there, now you can tell what it is.
yeah. Move your body, Ken. Hide it. All right, let's see. Other comments here. Joined late, but we'll catch up with the recording. Certainly. Thanks, guys. That Brent, no, your free time. Someone's asking, what's this? Rogue Light Space RPG? I like it. Oh, yeah. And boy, Ken likes it too. Boy, he really sat me down and was showing me all the models of his monsters and aliens and his space-based shoot 'em up. So yeah, when Ken says he's interested in doing that, that's not an idle threat. He's going to go produce that thing. I can tell.
Yeah. Like I said, check my, once we finish the test net and, the main net and all that, then, I'll start putting some of my time into that. I designed the whole thing, and it's there. It's from, my experience both playing video games and writing video games, and now game design on that as well, taking some of the best things from different types of things. Yeah, so I like that roguelite, like space RPG. Cool. Well, hey, we're 1 minute over now. We managed to extend it.
Which, thank goodness, because had we gone under time, like I said, it signals the apocalypse, so phew, that was close. But it does look like we've got through our questions, and maybe we should just go ahead and say, hey, we're ready to wrap up here. I think a lot of this has to do with the success here has to do with production behind the scenes. So really appreciative of our behind the scenes people for helping to make certain that Ken and I are properly corralled down a effective path in this conversation. Ken, unless you've got anything, do you have anything else you want to share before we depart?
No, and then again, thanks community for your patience, and I hope you appreciate that, Brett and I are getting on here, taking an hour of our time to kind of, show you that we're, real people really working hard to get this done. We're excited to get this out the door. I'm going to take a vacation after testnet launches, so I'm telling you that. I'll probably, for Thanksgiving or whatever, I'll go away for a couple days with the family, because, yeah, this is a crunch time right now, and I appreciate your patience with us, and your trust in us is very much appreciated.
Yeah. I'll double that. And again, thanks so much for all participating and taking time from your day also. And the questions that you're creating, that you're offering to us, those are valuable. Please keep those questions coming. As part of keeping this dialogue going. And with that, I think we're going to conclude here. Thank you so much, all. And